She was never meant to be the wife. Never meant to be the promise. Never meant to be remembered. She was just the servant. Her name was Hagar. And history almost forgot her. But heaven didn't. Long before she ran into the wilderness. Before the tears. Before the betrayal. Hagar lived in the house of Abraham and Sarah. A house filled with wealth. A house filled with promise. A house filled with one painful silence. They had no child. And in that culture, barrenness was more than sorrow. It was shame. Years passed. God had promised Abraham descendants as numerous as the stars. But Sarah's womb remained closed. And when waiting becomes unbearable, people start making their own plans. Sarah looked at Hagar. Not as a woman. Not as a daughter. Not as a soul. But as a solution. Take my servant, she told Abraham. Sleep with her. Maybe I can build a family through her. And just like that, Hagar's body became a strategy. Not a choice. Not love. A plan. Abraham agreed. And Hagar became pregnant. But pregnancy does something powerful. It shifts power. Suddenly, the servant carried what the wife could not. And something changed inside that house. Tension. Jealousy. Bitterness. Sarah began to despise Hagar. The same woman who had offered her. Now resented her. Have you ever been placed in a situation you didn't choose, and then blamed for it? That was Hagar. The hostility grew. The whispers grew louder. The home became unbearable. And one day, Hagar ran. Pregnant. Alone. In the desert. No protection. No provision. No plan. Just heat. And heartbreak. The desert is not forgiving. It exposes you. There are no walls to hide behind. No comfort. No distraction. Just you. And your pain. And somewhere between survival and surrender, Hagar collapsed. And that is when something happened. That had never happened before in Scripture. An angel of the Lord appeared. Not to Abraham. Not to Sarah. But to a runaway servant girl. He found her by a spring of water in the wilderness. Notice that. She didn't find God. God found her. He asked her a question. Hagar, servant of Sarah. Where have you come from? And where are you going? He called her by name. In a world that used her, God named her. She answered honestly. I am running away. No theology. No performance. No spiritual speech. Just truth. And the angel gave her instructions. Return. Submit. But hear this. I will multiply your descendants so much. They cannot be counted. The same promise given to Abraham was now spoken over her. God was not just the God of the chosen wife. He was the God of the unwanted servant. And then came the moment that changed everything. Hagar did something no one had done before. She gave God a name. You are El Roy. The God who sees me. Think about that. Abraham had spoken with God. Sarah had heard his promises. But Hagar named him. Because when you are invisible to everyone else, being seen feels like salvation. She returned home. Stronger. Not because her situation changed, but because she knew she was seen. She gave birth to a son, Ishmael. Years passed. And then, the promise finally came. Sarah became pregnant. Isaac was born. And joy filled the house. But joy for some can mean rejection for others. Conflict erupted again. This time, Sarah demanded something extreme. Send her away. Send the slave woman and her son away. And Abraham, heartbroken but pressured, sent Hagar away. Again. This time with bread. And a skin of water. That was it. No protection. No inheritance. No future. Just survival supplies. She wandered in the wild. She wandered in the wilderness of Beersheba. Until the water ran out. And when the water ran out, so did her hope. She placed Ishmael under a bush. Walked a distance away. And began to weep. She didn't want to watch her son die. This was the breaking point. No angel yet. No promise yet. Just despair. Have you ever reached that moment? When you've done everything you could. And it still wasn't enough. But heaven was listening. Scripture says, God heard the boy crying. Not the wealthy. Not the powerful. The crying of a rejected child. And the angel of God called to Hagar again from heaven. What troubles you, Hagar? Do not be afraid. God has heard the boy crying. He reminded her of the promise. I will make him into a great nation. And then, he opened her eyes. And she saw a well of water. The well was already there. But despair had blinded her. Sometimes the miracle is not that God creates something new. It's that he opens your eyes to what was already provided. She filled the skin with water. Gave the boy a drink. And they survived. And Ishmael grew. And God was with him. Hagar's story doesn't end in a palace. It doesn't end in applause. It ends in survival. In wilderness strength. In a quiet promise fulfilled. She was not the wife. Not the chosen covenant carrier. But she was seen. Twice sent away. Twice found. And that is why her story matters. Because some of you feel like Hagar. You weren't the first choice. You weren't the favorite. You weren't the one everyone celebrated. You were the solution. The backup. The forgotten one. But the God who found her in the wilderness is the same God who sees you. El Roy. The God who sees. He sees the single mother. The rejected dreamer. The overlooked servant. The person crying where no one else notices. He sees you. And being seen by God changes everything. Hagar may not have been the promise through Isaac. But she carried a promise of her own. And history confirms it. Nations rose from Ishmael. Her pain did not erase her purpose. Her rejection did not cancel her destiny. Her wilderness was not her ending. It was her encounter. So the next time you feel invisible, remember Hagar. The servant who named God. The rejected woman who was found. The one history tried to overlook. But heaven highlighted. She was rejected. Pregnant. Sent away. But she was never unseen. Because the God of Abraham is also the God of Hagar. And he still sees. If you got inspired by this story, please like, share, comment and subscribe in order not to miss our next videos. Be blessed.